Hello and welcome to the Avrum Rosensweig Show.
Welcome to one of the internet's best podcasts, where we dive deep into the lives of the extraordinary and fascinating people who leave an indelible mark on our world. Join us as we explore their captivating stories, remarkable achievements, and unique perspectives that shape history and inspire generations. Get ready to embark on a journey through the lives of inspiring people unlike any other.
Hello and welcome to the show. My name is Avrum Rosensweig, and I am here with my colleague, Rabbi Shlomo Gemara, for our series called Israel in Real Time. How are you, Rabbi?
Very well. Ready for Yetziat Mitzrayim, as this Parsha is talking about. So, every generation we have to find our Mitzrayim, our borders, restraints, and to make sure that we are out of it.
Rabbi, when we study the Parshiyot and you come to a particular Parsha, like we are this week about Yetziat Mitzrayim, is it part of your inner narrative? Like, in other words, do you feel it as you would something happening in your life today, let's say with your children or in your school? Are you part of that, actually?
I'm not sure what you mean part of it, but I certainly connect many things in the Parsha to my own life and the Jewish world life. And many times I think that, what is happening in the world this time is not by a random, occurrence, but it's God had to put it in this Parsha. So many times I feel this way.
Right. So in other words, the timing of this Parsha is not happenstance.
Exactly.
Not at all. So
it's not by mistake. It's orchestrated in advance.
Okay. Our series is called Torah in Real Time, and essentially what the Rabbi and I are doing is taking the Parsha HaShavua, which means the portion of the Torah that we learn this week, of which there are 54 throughout the entire year, and we apply it to current events. Last week we talked about the Parsha relative to the uprising in Iran, and we thought we would do a part 2 on that today because it's extraordinarily relevant. Before we dive into that, I want to ask you a very important question, Rabbi. In Iran today, there is a chief rabbi, and his name is Rabbi Yehuda Garami. He is a spiritual leader of Iran's Jewish community, overseeing religious life, synagogues, kosher supervision, and community institutions. There are other leaders within Iran, within the Jewish community, some of which belong to what would be called their parliament. There's a place within their parliament for a Jewish member. Now, my question to you is, I often think of these rabbis who are in countries that are governed as a theocracy, a very cruel environment where they are unable to truly speak what's on their mind. And Rabbi Garami has, over the last few years, actually sided, with Khomeini's regime. And I'll tell you something, it breaks my heart. It breaks my heart because I can't possibly imagine as a frum Jew, as a rabbi, as a leader, that his feelings are really in that place. Do you have thoughts about leadership within very dangerous and Jewish leadership in dangerous environments?
Listen, for centuries, that was the situation. Wherever there was a Jewish community, they had to sing songs of praise to the regime and to the current leader, although many times I'm sure that in their heart they wish to their death. That's part of the curse of Galut, where you have to live a double life, to be a Jew inside your home, to think like a Jew in your home, to feel like a Jew in your home, but you are going outside and you cannot express it because this is pikuach nefesh. You put your life in risk.
And I often think of the rabbis prior to and during the Holocaust and what they had to do in order to keep as many people alive as possible knowing that sometimes there was a trade-off. Sometimes the Nazis would come to them and say, you need to decide who we're going to kill this week. There's a particular sefer, I think we may have talked about it before, and I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of it.
It's Rabbi Oshri. He described many of these heartbreaking decisions that sometimes Rabbi had to do, and it was something that usually you need in the Jewish law when times are okay, like you need Sanhedrin, 71 smartest Torah scholars to decide over it, and here you come to a situation where life and death questions are determined by a local rabbi. And you have to decide, because sometimes not making a decision is actually to decide upon two people who are going to be killed.
It's really something to consider what generation we're born into and what environment that God placed us in. In Rabbi Yehuda Garami's case, he was placed in an almost impossible situation. An article that I found online states that Iran's Jewish leadership publicly pledged full allegiance to the Islamic Republic, with Chief Rabbi Yehuda Garami declaring that the country's Jews stand in a single front in defense of our homeland. And this is according to reports in the state-aligned news agency ISNA and Tabnak. As I said before, what a difficult life these rabbis, these leaders must lead.
Absolutely. And, me as a rabbi here in Canada, I find it very inspirational, because sometimes we take our freedom and our ability to express our views for granted. But this rabbi and other rabbis in other places in the world just prove us how we take things for granted, and we shouldn't. What a bracha, what a blessing it is to live in a free country.
And in that light, I was also thinking about fear, and the fear that rabbi must experience on a daily basis, whether he's saying the right thing, whether he's aligned with the regime in a way that is safe for the 9,000 Jews who live in Iran, and of course the fear that the people of Iran are experiencing right now. I have never felt that level of fear. Once, when I was little, Rabbi, my father of blessed memory took me to a rally against Premier Kosygin at that time. And it was a very crazy environment, and there were RCMP on horses. And the horses started running into the crowds because certain aspects of those rallying outside of the Jewish community became very wild. And I felt, as a 9-year-old or so, a horse coming down upon me. And I remember that fear to this day. I like everybody else, I've had certain fears throughout my life. But like you, who was a young man of 19 years old in Lebanon, that level of fear I have never experienced.
Wow. That's very interesting. And as I said, we every morning when we say Modéani and we thank God for waking up, we have also to thank Him for living in the free world. It's not something that we should take for granted. And the threat for the freedom of the world is still luring. It's still there.
Well, as you move forward in your life, Rabbi Admeva Esrim, does that fear ever crop up inside of you? Are you ever reminded of it? Do you ever actually play it out in real time?
Not so much. One of the blessings that God gave us is shichecha, like forgetting things. And on one hand, we have to remind ourselves sometimes these times it will give us a very different view on where we are right now. But at the same time, I can't remember since Lebanon a fear for my life. I don't think so.
Are you afraid for your children in Israel at any point in time?
Yes, all the time. I don't know a parent who will not be fearful. Listen, Israel is in a situation that constant war. We see what happened in the last few years. Yes, I am. I have to admit it.
When missiles were coming over from Iran, as an example, were you constantly texting your children in the shelters?
Um, no, they have more important things to do to make sure to talk to their own children. I don't want to disturb them. I'm here, Baruch Hashem, everything is fine. They have to deal with the situation, but obviously we call them after and just to find out that everything is okay.
And may I ask, is your wife on the same page as you in times like that?
100%.
She is. She is.
But
Yeah.
can you imagine it differently? I don't think so. I think that every parent, when he hear about something like this, he's torn. On one hand, you want to know in real time what is happening. At the same time, you don't want to be another burden to your children. The fact that you are like really concerned and afraid of what is happening should not add to their stress and their feelings.
Rabbi, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I just say in a real time, but after you hear, and it's quite amazing that we sometimes we had cases when we were on the phone and we said, I think you have to go to the shelter because we could see on our app, that there is a Tzeva Adom, the red color alert. They did not know anything, and after 5 seconds, you can hear that the sirens start to work. So in today's world, you really want to know everything on real time, but again, you have to restrain yourself, not to put more pressure to the situation.
Rabbi, you talked about the application of the Parsha HaShavua, the Torah portion of the week, and how it's not just happenstance as to when it comes out on the calendar. Within that light, I want to ask you a question. The Torah portion this week, as we will get to shortly, is fascinating because it talks about educating your children. And when people say to you, what do you love about being a Jew? One of the things I think that one can answer is it is the advanced understanding. It's a very forward way of thinking about the importance of what we call Masorah, what we call teaching. And there you are, you're an educator, and you've been an educator your entire life. It all started out during a war in Israel when they asked you to teach a class because the teachers weren't there. I love that story. This must be a very poignant parsha to you in that light alone, the idea of educating your children, right?
Absolutely. And a continuity is not just a nice word that is buzzing, especially today in the Jewish world. This is actually the Lakmus paper, which to me is the difference between values of one nation compared to the other one. Let's talk a little bit about the last plague in Egypt. It was Makat Bechorot, right? Hitting the elders or the firstborns in Egypt. What does that mean? To me, the plague is a way to tell rulers that the most important things they have to think about is the next generation.
Yes.
You can be a great leader, but you have to ensure, first of all, that culture, masoret, as you say, tradition, history is going to continue. You are just one link in the chain. And the worst punishment to Pharaoh, and this is where the plagues are culminating, is losing the next generation. And at the contra, the Torah is telling us, you have to be very different. You have always to think about the next generation. So I see the Makat Bechorot not just like the punishment in it. There is a big message there that we translate in the opposite direction, where Hashem said, you don't think about the next generation, so there will be no next generation. For us, next generation means we have to create, educate, lead the next generation, and we do it every single year in the night of the Seder.
Yes, and then just to add to that, how often do you hear from Holocaust survivors? I just interviewed Nate Leipziger, who's considered one of the voices of of the Holocaust here in Canada. And they always speak about having children and grandchildren and now great grandchildren, and that how that is a victory over Hitler.
Absolutely. There is a very talented musician in Toronto. His name is A.B. Rotenberg. Many people know his songs, including Acheinu Kol Beit Israel. He wrote it. He's a person in Toronto, a Talmid Chacham, but also a fantastic musician. And he turned a beautiful story to a song about the first year, I think in Warsaw or Vilna, after the Holocaust. So Jews gathered for Simchat Torah in the main shul where people will gather in Simchat Torah. And there was no Torah scroll. There was nothing there. And they were broken. Not only about like losing everything in the Holocaust, but here they try to start new life, and in Simchat Torah they don't have a Sefer Torah to celebrate with. And there was a little child, 3-4 years old, and one of the people gathered in the shul took him and they danced with him at the Sefer Torah.
I love
It's
that.
such a moving, beautiful story. By the way,
Uh,
if I'm not mistaken, the stories say that the boy turned to be later, can't you remember, Waxman was one of the great leader of the UJA in New York, but I'm not sure about it. So he turned it to a beautiful, beautiful song, and the idea is the same. What is our real living Torah? Our children.
it's so beautiful, Rabbi. So beautiful. When you hear about the burning of a shul, as we had recently heard about in southern United States, perpetrated by a 19-year-old boy, just phenomenal how much hatred that boy must have harbored against the Jewish people, against the world. And you hear that two of the Sifrei Torah were burnt. What is your emotional response?
Uh, I remember also as a boy, and certainly it was before the Six-Day World War, Six-Day War. So my parents used to take me to Jerusalem, but you could not go to the old city. The closest place to the old city was Kever David, the grave of David, or traditionally considered to be the grave of David, which is on the slopes of Har Zion. Next to the grave was a Holocaust museum, a very Jewish one. And I do remember that two items. One was burned a parchment of Sefer Torah that was on display. And the other one was a parchment of Sefer Torah that was used for a lamp.
Lamp,
They had lamp, electric lamp, and
lamp
a,
shades, I think. Yes.
what?
Lamp shades. Shades.
Yeah, exactly, like made of a parchment that was cut from a Sefer Torah. Like I remember it until this very day, more than 50 years later. And this was my first time that I remember like the shock because Sefer Torah, like even for a child, especially for a child, my father always like used to take me up to kiss a Sefer Torah. And this was the first time that I actually saw a, something about the Holocaust, which I never knew about. My parents certainly did not speak about it, not my father, parent. I never heard anything about it. Um, Unfortunately, since then, I went to some other levayot. When Sefer Torah is buried, there is a levaya like a real person. And interestingly enough, when you see Sefer Torah buried, you have to do kriya, like you are standing next to a human being. There is always the association of Sefer Torah with a real human being, and the same shock that you have when someone very close to you pass away, and it is a shock. You're supposed to have when you see a Sefer Torah burned or destroyed. It's a very difficult moment. And you take the Sefer Torah and you buried it in big, like earthware jugs in the cemetery, in a Jewish cemetery. It's a very traumatic event.
Tell us the reason behind that. Why do you have to bury it? Why do you have to rip your shirt?
Um, the halacha is that according to our Orthodox halacha, because I know that today it's like sometimes replaced by black ribbon, but the halacha require you to take your a suit, coat, shirt, whatever you wear, and to cut it and to rip it to show that you are like in unbelievable stress and pain and grief. And as I said, when you see a Sefer Torah, it's someone beloved that passed away.
Yeah, it's incredible. Rabbi, before we dive into Torah in real time, I know that last Shabbat you went on a Shabbaton with your students.
And let me tell you, this Shabbat I'm going also to the Shabbaton. So wish me luck because I hear that it's going to be incredibly cold.
Yes.
Yes, but yeah, I went last Shabbat and I'm going this Shabbat.
Right. So it's incredibly cold here in Toronto and Ontario. And for our brothers and sisters who are watching the show or listening to the show in Jerusalem or in Israel, it's been a rainy sort of week. My niece was telling me that in Israel, they have sort of this black humor that people are more fearful of the rain than they are of the missiles coming. So we're all a little bit worried about the weather. But before we dive in, and what fascinates me about you is your adventuresome spirit. And I love that about you. I really do. And I think that's one of the things that brings out the life in our chavruta here. You told me when I popped by your house this week that you had gone skiing on the last Shabbaton.
Yeah.
And you said your back was out a little bit, you're a little bit sore. But I thought that was wonderful that you did that. And when you came to Canada, what did you just get on the hills and try skating and all that stuff?
Absolutely. Skating, skiing, not curling, although I tried it a few times. So, but skating, yes, absolutely. I always said I don't think I'm the best Rosh Yeshiva in the world, but I am the best Rosh Yeshiva skater apparently in the world. I don't know if I should be too happy about it, but I love it. And I told my students, ski, snowboarding, all these had a very important message.
Yes.
The cold, the freezing temperatures are a curse. It's not born for like God did not create Canada really to live in. It was like a human mistake and assumption that they can live it. And you take this curse
Yes.
of freezing cold, of terrible temperature, the snow that looks wonderful in a postcard, but when you have really to shovel it, in order to go to work, this is a curse. So people came and turned the curse to fun. And that's what I love about the human beings. You can take every situation and to turn it around.
Great.
So normally, like, you have this hill, it's slippery. You cannot walk up, you cannot go down. And here people came with an idea. We will take tubes, we will take like this, skis or snowboards, and we will make lots of fun of it. I love this approach. I love this approach, and I tell my students that's what we have to learn here. We have to learn that sometimes we are going to get into difficult situation, but there is a way. And you must think about how to turn this situation to something that you will grow through. You will make it to a fun. It's not easy, but here is a good example.
That's a wonderful point. I like that, and I will embrace that idea. I have to tell you something. After a great snowfall here in Toronto this past week, I decided to don all my winter garb, which I do not like. I don't like layers on me, but I bought it all, and I went for a walk at Earl Bales Park, which is only minutes away from my house and from your house. and the snow was so high that when I stepped into it, it came up to probably between my knees and my waist. And I thought for a moment, Rabbi, that that if I got stuck here, you know, what would happen? I wouldn't be able to move. It reminded me once I was up in cottage country and I was canoeing in a bog, you know, and bogs are really thick with trees that have fallen and branches and this and that. And I got stuck in the bog. And I'm looking outside of the bog at a nearby highway and I'm seeing people passing by and people walking and living life. And I thought for a moment, you know, sometimes we're in a situation which we almost feel like is perilous. You know, I'm being a bit dramatic here, but and you look outside of that and you see life outside of you. And it just reminds you how important that every moment is, how important it is to be safe, right? And also in the context of Canada and the snow, to understand the snow, right? It requires a certain cultural awareness that newcomers don't always have. So that it reminded me of that as well.
Yeah, you know, I'll just share with you a beautiful Dvar Torah that I once heard. There is a beautiful pasuk in Psalm that we say in Psuke de Dimra every morning. Noten sheleg katzemer, he gives a snow like wool.
Yes.
Kfor ka'efer yefazer, and the freezing cold and the ice is like ashes, and God send it to the world. And normally we explain it like, you know, the snow is white as wool, and soft as wool, and the ice, the silvery ice is like effer, like the ashes which are silver, and it looks the same. So you want to describe the color of the snow and the ice. But I heard once from the Vilna Gaon, the famous genius Torah scholar in Vilna, and he explained it in a beautiful way, also to teach us a great lesson. God gives snow, but with the snow, He will give us the wool to protect us from the snow.
Mm-hmm.
So Noten Shelek Katzamer, He gives snow, but Hashem will never put you in a situation that is beyond your ability. So when He gives you the snow, He gives you also the wool to protect yourself from it.
Excellent.
And when He gives you the ice, He gives you also the ashes that when you spread it, it melts the ice and it helps you to not to slip and to slide on the ice. And again, the same idea. God give a plague or give something which might block you, but with it, He gives you also the mean how to overcome it, which is a beautiful example to everything that we go through our life. God give us all kinds of challenges, but with the challenges, He give us the power and the ability to stand these challenges.
That's lovely. By the way, is the word sheleg or karach ice? Is it found in the Torah at all?
Oh, a lot of time. Yeah.
Sheleg?
Sheleg, absolutely. About Miriam, it said that when she spoke about her brother and she got the leprosy, it was Lavan kasheleg. It was like white as snow, which is interesting because I'm pretty sure that in Egypt they never saw snow.
So that's the thing.
But who knows? Maybe here and there was snow. Maybe Moses himself, you know, upon his travels, remember, he was like in all kinds of places. We don't know what happened between 20 years to 80 years until he reappeared on the stage of history. Maybe he went to places where there's snow. He knew what it is.
Was karach a thing of your growing up years? Ice? Did you like ice in your drinks?
Kerach, you know, it's very interesting because Jacob himself said, "By Yom Achalani Chorev, I worked so hard, and the sun and the heat affected me. Ubalayla bekerach balayla, and ice at night." So remember, this was like northern Syria, and the nights can be freezing. By the way, it's very interesting. You know, let's make it our Hebrew corner. You know, the Onkelos translate, the famous translator of the Torah to Aramaic, how we translate kerach, ice, glida. In Aramaic,
Hmm.
Kerach is glida, and that's how glida, when you go to Israel and you ask for glida or ice cream, that's the source of it.
Oh, very interesting. Okay,
Yeah.
great. Okay, folks, here we are talking about the Torah portion in Torah in real time. And let me give an introduction to the Parsha, Parashat Bo. Excuse me. Parashat Bo is the moment in the Exodus story when power finally collapses under the weight of its own cruelty. Egypt is no longer merely warned, it is undone. The plagues intensify, darkness descends, and the firstborn fall. Yet the most striking feature of Bo is not the suffering of Egypt, but the stubbornness of its ruler. Pharaoh is given chance after chance to change course, and each time he refuses, not because he lacks information, but because surrendering power would mean admitting moral failure. At the same time, something equally dramatic is happening amongst the enslaved Israelites. Under the leadership of Moshe, they prepare for freedom before they are free. They mark their doors, they eat the Korban Pesach openly and readying themselves to leave, even though Egypt still holds them captives. Very interesting point. Bo teaches that redemption begins internally when a people decide they will no longer live in fear or denial of who they are. This Torah portion echoes powerfully in the current uprising in Iran. There, too, a rigid authoritarian regime clings to control while its people pay the price through economic collapse, repression, darkness, literal and metaphorical, and the silency of life itself. And there, too, ordinary citizens are doing something revolutionary, refusing to comply inwardly. Women remove hijabs, protesters chant in the street, families mourn publicly. Like the Israelites in Egypt, they are acting free before they are free. Parashat Bo reminds us that tyrannies do not fall because they are convinced by argument, but because their moral emptiness is exposed and because the people beneath them stop pretending. Freedom is not born in the moment of escape. It is born the moment of fear stops dictating behavior. In every generation, Bo asks the same question: who is still clinging to power at the cost of human life, and who is already preparing to walk out? What did you think of that?
You know what? This is the most important lesson the world has to listen to these days. And you, I think, put the finger on something very, very important. We used to think that the redemption from Egypt was all done by God. And it's very true. The plagues were unnatural. The ability for an entire nation to leave Egypt was something that was orchestrated by God and the Moshe Rabbeinu and Aaron and the elders. It's all true. But there were seeds of freedom already. And interestingly enough, the Torah, two parshiot ago, are telling us the story about the Me'aldot, Shifra and Pua, who made a moral decision, because these are the important things that you just say, the value of other people's life. And the seeds of redemption, I think the Torah is telling us that there were unique people who were already redeemed, who already resisted the lack of appreciation to human life. And these are the story of the Me'aldot. So the Torah always go hand by hand, like what God is doing and what is happening in this world. And the Torah want to tell us that these two extraordinary women already possessed the qualities of freedom. They resisted the decree of Pharaoh.
Mm-hmm.
They made an effort to save the babies, and they were willing to pay the price. You know, the Rashbam, the grandson of Rashi, explained the phrase "Vayas lahem batim," that he did for them houses. He said, you know what these houses? It were jails. He put them in jail, and they were willing for maintaining their values to be in jail. That usually in Egypt was a very bad place to be. So if we take Iran today, the regime think that if he will kill people, he will solve the problem. But exactly the opposite. I don't know when the revolution will happen, but once the leadership dismiss the life of citizens, I can tell you 100%, they will fall. They will fall. And the ability of people under this oppression that takes already more than 40 years to resist, to fight, this by itself is it's the beginning of redemption.
Rabbi, I want to give you some comparisons within the Parsha to what's happening in Iran today. And I would like you to explain to our viewers and to our listeners, what do we do with these comparisons, which seem so direct? In other words, when we study the Torah, let's say Parashat Bo in this case, how are we supposed to learn it? What are we supposed to take out of it in terms of human behavior and in terms of the natural happenings of the world? So let me give you some direct comparisons. Hardened ruler, regime clinging to power. Plagues increasing, escalating state repression. Darkness over Egypt, internet blackout cutting off light.
Wow.
Firstborn struck, thousands killed by crackdown. Israel prepares before freedom, protesters acting free before safe. Public Korban Pesach, chants and protests in the streets. Visible defiance, women removing their hijabs publicly. Resistance despite danger, protests despite violence. Moral collapse of empire, legitimate crisis of regime. And finally, freedom begins internally, Iranians refusing fear internally.
You know what? That's just amazing.
Right?
That's just amazing. I did not think about all these points, but certainly you just hit all the nails, all in the center. It's amazing. And it's not too surprising, because I think that I told you last week, the way I read the Tanakh is a book about rebuking power, about making it clear that the only power is the power of morality. Yes, sometimes you need a physical power against your enemies, but at the end of the day, it's your morality that will determine if a nation, individual, survives. And you just gave fantastic examples how the dynamics of getting out of Egypt are exactly the dynamics against the power of Pharaoh, even if his name is Khomeini or Khamenei or whatever it is. In one point in our history, it was Haminai or Haman, which
Yes.
apparently comes from the
Yes.
same thing. So the dynamics are always the same, of power with no control, who at a certain point don't care anymore about the citizen, but only about the layer of leadership, their families, their life. But the Torah is teaching us a very important lesson. It's not happening overnight. The Jewish people were in Egypt for a long time, but this is a message to humanity in general. Rulers like Pharaoh eventually fall. People who are willing to pay the price of freedom eventually will be free.
Just talking about how long the Jews were in Egypt for a moment, I know it's a machloket. The Torah this week says 430 years. What is your understanding of the slavery?
I'll tell you, I'm a simple reader, and I'll tell you what I think, because God promised Avram that they are going to be for 400 years. But in reality, if you think about it, according to the Torah itself, okay, Levi, son of Jacob, arrived to Egypt. He had a son, his name was Kehat. Kehat had a son, his name was Amram. He had a son, or 3 children, Aaron, Moses, and Miriam. So we are talking about Levi, who came apparently in the middle of his years, had a son by the name of Kehat and Amram, and Moses already left Mitzrayim. So we are talking about 4 generations, which I would say every generation is something of, especially in their time, something of 20 years, I believe, maybe even less, because they, not like us, went to university and so on. They married in their 60s, when they were 16, 17s. So So we are talking about what? Something around 100 years, which makes sense that they were anything between, I would say, 100 to 150 years, something in between.
Mhm.
That's the way I read it. So here, all our commentators try to understand what is the number 400. So they explain it from the born of Yitzchak. The process started then. But on a simple reading, I think that the Jewish people spend in Egypt anything between 120 to 200 years, like
Okay.
a simple reading.
Let's talk about the plagues for a few minutes, because those are really important to Yetziat Mitzrayim, the coming out of Egypt and putting Pharaoh in his place. When I think about the plagues, I think about friends of mine who every Pesach at their Passover Seders, they have little kids. And what they would do is they would take little plastic figurines and they would set them out on the table, and every plague was represented by another figurine. And to me, that's fascinating because the imagery is very stark of all of these plagues. In my mind, especially darkness. And I want to tell you why I feel that way. A few years ago, you'll remember there was an ice storm here in Toronto,
Yes.
and all the electricity was off, and it was dark in our building, and it was cold. And my son and I wanted to go out, which meant we had to go down to the garage and get our car. And I felt I've gone down to the garage so many times that I know how to get there, even if my eyes are closed. Turns out, Rabbi, my son and I get into the garage and we go in the direction that I think we should go. He was little at the time, and we walked into a wall. And I turned to my son. I said, "Son, remember I told you about the darkness in Egypt?" He goes, "I do, Daddy." I go, "This was the darkness in Egypt."
Wow.
Okay.
A very good way.
Good analogy. So Rashi says about the darkness. What do we know about the darkness? The darkness was thick and it was immobilizing, and Egyptians could not rise or move. The Midrash Tanchuma, a midrash, darkness exposed moral paralysis. A society unable to move is already spiritually dead. When we talk about the choshech, the darkness, what comes to mind, Rabbi?
So, the Torah says something very surprising. The Torah described the darkness not as they couldn't see their seat or the table. The Torah said something very striking, and if you read it and you internalize it, you understand what is a real choshech.
Yes.
The Torah said, "Velo ra'u ish et achiv." They couldn't see each other. And when society is in darkness, when I cannot see you, you cannot see other people, you cannot understand them, you cannot communicate with them. This is the highest degree of choshech. It's not just the physical one, it's exactly the sense that you described, the isolation, that I have no communication with other people. And today, let me tell you, you brought the darkness of the internet. Okay, maybe it's not dark, but you know what? The inability to communicate.
Yes.
Like, I can tell you, I see it many, many times. I don't think that there will be a greater punishment in this generation than taking from someone the screen. Even little children, like our life without this is like you take our lifeline. And it's interesting to think, like, if we are going to ask my students, maybe I will do it after this podcast, I'll ask them, what you would prefer, like being in a complete darkness, but I will leave you with a smartphone, or like on the beach with no smartphone? What do you think is going to be their answer, Avrum? Because I have a very good feeling what is going to be the answer.
They want their smartphones.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The problem is that with social media, with all your friends on Instagram and here and there, eventually it's also velo ra'u ish et achiv. You maybe see the image, you see the beautiful pictures, but the achiv, the point that connect people, is lacking. We think it's a communication, but it's a very twisted one.
Do you think there is such a darkness in Israel today? A lot of problems between the religious and non-religious. Is that a form of darkness?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And obviously, the social media accentuated. It's beyond like exaggeration. Everyone just see the blemishes of the other one, which is very, very sad. And there is a very interesting machloket, because at the first night of the redemption, the Jewish people had to smear blood on the doorpost. But there is a big machloket if it was at the outside, on the street side, or it was inside the house.
Mm-hmm.
Because the Torah does not specify. You can read it this way or in this way. And indeed, our Torah scholars understood it this way, and some of them the other way. And both of them contain a beautiful idea. Was the blood a sign to the outside? Here in this house, there are Jews, and we don't care anymore about the Egyptian culture. We have our own culture. We are not afraid to be Jews. And here is the blood on the doorpost for everyone to see in the outside. Or was it inside to tell ourselves, we are Jews, we are unique, we are one family, we are going to be redeemed? And many, many times I feel that we are very good in smearing the blood outside and to scream, we are Jews, we are proud Jews, Am Yisrael Chai, and everything. But sometimes I think, we have to smear the blood inside also. We have to remember that. Not only when we talk about anti-Semitism and the outside world, we have to remind ourselves we are a family. And in a family, there are differences, but we have to find a way to live together.
The mezuzah of our soul, of our neshama.
Exactly.
Lovely, lovely. Rabbi, in that light, I just want to tell you, as I mentioned before, I interviewed Nate Leipziger. God bless him. He's 97 years old. And as I said, he's the voice of the Holocaust. He actually lives in one of those condos here in Toronto where anti-Semites came in and ripped down some of the mezuzot of his neighbors. And we talked about that, and it was jarring. It was a very, very disturbing thing for him, having seen, the rise of violence in Germany and Poland before the war, and then to live in a condominium where the mezuzot were ripped off. It's interesting, our relationship to the mezuzot on our homes. It's a very big deal, actually, isn't it?
It is. And, you can go on Europe, in places, in communities, in streets where Jews were lived, and still see the hole inside the gate where the mezuzah used to be. You go to Venice, you go to Rome, you can see it until this very day.
Yeah.
Because right after the Holocaust, for many local, this was like an empty house that the owner is not going to come back.
Do you remember your childhood mezuzah in your home when you were little?
I can tell you one thing, and this sight haunts me. First of all, we never left the home without kissing the mezuzah 3 times. I don't know, like my mother's grandfather used to do it, and we continued it until this very day when I go, not every day, unfortunately, but when I go to Israel or I go to a long way, I kiss the mezuzah 3 times. But what haunts me is my father, alav shalom, when he left the house for the last time, going to the hospital. He went to the car. Just before he entered the car, he went back to kiss the mezuzah in the house. And he apparently knew that maybe it's his last journey or something like this, but he remembered that he forgot to kiss the mezuzah. And I was there, and you know what? I don't think that this picture will ever leave my mind.
Rabbi, there's a pasuk which reads, "Vayi b'chatzi halayla v'Hashem hikakal b'chor be'eretz Mitzrayim." It was at midnight that God struck every firstborn in the land of Egypt. This is in Shemot 12:29. Midrash Rabbah says Egypt enslaved and murdered Israel, beginning with their firstborn sons. The punishment therefore mirrors the crime. Since Egypt sought to destroy Israel's future, God strikes Egypt's future. So the core idea behind this is that it's called Mida Keneged Mida, which is measure for measure. My question to you, Rabbi Gemara, is that when we study Ayin Tachat Ayin in the Torah, Lex Talionis, the idea that someone knocks your eye out, you knock their eye out, the rabbis say, no, no, no. You don't go and knock another person's eye out. The whole world will be blind. What you do is you pay with monetary response. So Mida Keneged Mida is not inherent to that obligation. Yet the Chachamim, or many of them anyways, are saying here, the reason why God knocked out the firstborn of the Egyptians is because they did it to us. Mida Keneged Mida. How do you answer that?
Okay, this is a very important question, which will help me to highlight a very important principle when we read Tanakh, when we read texts from ancient times. We have to remember, and I would say right on the beginning, that if God is going to do something like Mitzrayim today, it might not involve the same measurements of punishment today. Punishment at the end of the day must be something that is understood as educational last resort for the culture and the community that we live in. And this is highly, highly important. I think that we mentioned already that the Talmud is telling us that capital punishment was stopped somewhere in the middle of the days of Second Temple. And why? The Torah is eternal. The Torah says that for certain things you have to give a capital punishment. If a person murder another one, the Torah states clearly that he has to pay with his life. However, our sages say, Misherabu harotzchin, once it became like normal for people to go outside and to kill others, they stopped the capital punishment. The reason is, if a punishment cannot educate and the moral of society was broken, there is no point anymore to kill other people because nothing good will come out of it. And to me, it's a very important principle. You can punish someone as long as in his moral system, the punishment highlight a value that he agree with, he can identify with. So for us, human life today became so important that we cannot even think about killing a murderer. In most Western countries, in most states, even in the United States, they canceled the death penalty for all kinds of reasons. But again, this by itself seems too violent. And I'm pretty sure that if God would today repeat Makot Mitzrayim, let's say in America or wherever it is, he will use other methods because we are going to take it as violence and not as an educational punishment. 4,000 years ago, people, especially in places like Egypt, were part of the property of the ruler. And if you hit the ruler and you hit his property, you don't hit just the Nile and you don't just hit his animals to show his weakness, but you also hit his people. In the culture dominated in Egypt, in the ancient East of their days, this punishment was well understood. If we try to read it with the eyes of the 21st century, we will fail. We will not understand it. And as I said, I'm pretty sure that today God will bring other punishment. I don't know what, because if I would know, I would be God myself, but I don't. But I can assure you 100%, things which negate and are against the value of modern society today, and it will be interpreted not as punishment, but excessive force, violence, unfairness. God will find the way that he will show you the midah keneged midah in the jargon or the dictionary you use. I hope that I was understood.
No, it's great. It's great what you're saying. I'm just curious. I was imagining your students coming up to you and go, Rabbi Gemara, come on, this is a God of compassion. You must hear that a lot from your students.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I talk about it in Purim. The Megillah end with a massacre.
Yeah.
Eventually, the Jews committed like a massacre of the people who wanted to kill them. To the point, you have to know that Jewish scholars, especially in the Reform movement, wanted to cancel Purim altogether. For them, it looked like a terrible end of the story. And we are talking about the middle of the 19th century. People could not imagine anymore, like this bloodbath that took place in Shushan, not knowing that less than 100 years later, it's going to be dwarfed by what the Nazis did to the Jews. But at the time, again, as I said, like the values of the time, the story of Megillat Esther did not fit. And if it doesn't fit, you take it out. I'm talk about Geiger, like the greatest scholars. They saw it as a terrible end. We don't have enough time to talk about one of the most geniuses women, Simone Weil, who one of the greatest intellectuals of the Jewish nation ever. And she wanted actually to convert herself from Judaism, because no little because of the story of Purim. That we take as a day of Simcha, but they found it very difficult to grasp. And again, the same story. Like, we have to read the stories of the Bible through the moral lens of this generation, and to understand that actually it's not going to repeat itself the same way in our generation. One of the big problems is, to be honest with you, that's, I think, one of the big problems of Islam. They want to imply the standards of the 7th century to the 21st century. And if you think this way, you have a problem.
Yes.
You have a problem. And the beauty of the Jewish religion is that we know that certain values like the Kedusha, the sanctity of life, and helping others and helping the people who are not privileged as you is a constant value, but the implication might be very different from one generation to another.
Rabbi, before I ask you the last question, just an add-on to what you're saying, do you think the overall narrative amongst the Chachamim within the Torah understanding is that Shimon and Levi's massacre of Shechem was wrong?
Again, I don't need Chachamim for this. They were heavily rebuked by their father, by Yaakov. And when you read the story of Shimon and Levi, the two sides are brought. The brother disagree with their father about it, but at the end, he had the last word. He cares them for what they did.
Yes.
Now, here is the point. Here's the point, and I wrote one about the philosophy of Simone Weil. We have to understand, when we contain the evil side of the world, we also do disservice to justice. We have to know there is moral behavior and immoral behavior. We have evil nations and evil people, and we have good people. So containing evilness is not a righteous thing. And we have to remember this. But there's a famous story with Beruria and her husband, Rabbi Meir. The story goes like this in the Talmud. The Talmud is telling us that Rabbi Meir, one of the Tanaim who lived about 1800 years ago, had very bad neighbors. They were robbing their houses. They were disrespectful to everyone. They apparently did terrible things. And he was praying that they will die. And because he didn't see any other way to deal with these thugs. And upon hearing him by his wife, Bruria, she said, don't the verse say something different? The pasuk does not say, the chotim, the sinners, are going to be annihilated, but the chataim, the sins. So instead of praying that they will die, pray that the sins will die. And this is a different approach. So obviously, we want the ideology of all nations, all religions to be peaceful and loving. But at the same time, we have to remember that containing the evil side is evil by itself. And we have to take all measures to make sure that evil is going to be destroyed. Hopefully, not the people who carry it, but sometimes you have no other choice.
Somebody once told me when I asked them if it's okay to pray for the death of an evil leader, they said it's better. It's not such a Jewish thing. It's better to pray that they do tshuva.
Yeah, that's exactly the story in the Talmud.
Yeah.
But what happened if, all your tefillot are not helping?
Right.
Then
right.
sometimes you have to send a missile and, if it's Soleimani or someone else, and to solve the problem violently. And the Torah says about one of the punishment, after inflicting death on people, the Torah says that you do the right thing and that God is going to give you mercy. And one of the commentators says, any violation, even for the right thing, like Shimon and Levi that you said, creates impact and negative impact on people. Soldiers are going and they killing, but at the same time, they do the right thing, but at the same time, the preciousness, the value of life is going down. And when they come back, they have to learn that, yes, sometimes you have to do dirty work, but this is not normal. Human life are precious. And it's not simple. It's not easy.
That's powerful stuff. Rabbi, in conclusion, the Torah is a kind of serpentine in its own way. It tells us a story. It tells us a narrative about the Jewish people going into slavery and then coming out of slavery through the work of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and his partner Moshe Rabbeinu and Aaron, of course. But yet within that narrative, within that story, if you will, there is discussion about values within Judaism. And what's very, very compelling in this week's Parsha, we're talking about Yetzias Mitzrayim, we're talking about the plagues, and then all of a sudden, HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem Rosh Chadashim. All of a sudden, the Torah, the God tells the Jewish people, this is sort of the first mitzvah of the nation, that this month shall be for you the first of the months. Why? Why is this included here?
I find it one of the most powerful messages of this Parsha. Slaves have no time. They don't care about time. Like, they don't wait for 5 o'clock to leave work and to go to their home and to tell stories to their children. They do at 5 o'clock exactly what they did at 2 o'clock, or they will do at 9 p.m. The master will tell them what to do. And the first thing that a free person had is the ability to control his own time. And this is such a powerful message. And, I always tell my students, 2 days ago was Rosh Chodesh Shvat, and I went from one student to another, and they say, Chodesh Tov, you know what it is? Because many of them don't know. And they say, can you believe it? Like, we have a general calendar. Everyone knows that today is the 21st of January, like billions of people. There is one little nation of 15 million people, which is nothing compared to all the population in the world. And you know that we have our own calendar, our own system.
Yeah.
On one hand, it's such a chutzpah. Like, what is bad in the Gregorian calendar? It's perfect. 7 billion people using it. But we have our calendar, because your calendar, your time system, so to speak, tells something about your culture, about your freedom. And the Jewish people feel so free and so unique that we have, yes, the audacity, the chutzpah, to have our own calendar, which is different from the rest of the world. And this was such a powerful message to the Jewish people. You are unique. You have a special mission. and
Yes.
therefore you are going to have your own time. And many times I see one of the popular gifts for bar mitzvah is like a beautiful, like a clock, a watch. And there is a message here. It's not only a piece of jewelry. It's like, from now on, adulthood, maturing means you control your own time, which is such an important message, especially in our generation. We control time. Time don't control us.
And also the idea of it's called in Yiddish a Rosensweig,
Oh, absolutely.
which the groom's watch. He's given
But
a very beautiful.
I see it more irony, because until now, maybe you controlled your own time. From now on, your spouse is going to do it.
Did you get a Rosensweig? Did you get a
Yeah,
watch?
of course. I do remember one of the beautiful pieces that my mother had from her great grandfather was a beautiful silver watch that was given to her great grandfather as a gift for his wedding when he became Chatan.
My father, blessed memory, he was not much for jewelry at all. I think most frum men are not. But one of the things that he loved, Rabbi, was his gold pocket watch that he had. And that was very, very special to him. So
Interesting.
I want to conclude with a poem from AI on Parashat Bo, Before the Doors Open. Parashat Bo is the sound a regime makes when it refuses to listen. Let me say that again. It's very beautiful. Parashat Bo is the sound a regime makes when it refuses to listen. Power has been worn, shaken, exposed, and now it collapses under its own cruelty. Egypt is no longer corrected. It is undone. Darkness doesn't fall. It presses. The future is struck first. Pharaoh does not bend, not from ignorance, but because surrender would mean admitting failure. Rashi teaches that his heart hardened only after he hardened it himself. Ramban warns abuse free will is eventually lost. Power clings hardest when it knows it is wrong. Beneath the empire's shadow, a quieter revolution begins. Slaves start acting free. Not later, now. They reclaim time, name a new month, take back the future. They mark their doors with blood openly. They eat in haste, shoes on. The staff is ready. Rashi cautions, hesitation would have destroyed them. The Zohar adds, one more moment and they would have been lost. Freedom does not wait for permission. The night is happening again. In Iran, darkness thickens. In silence, fear, enforced forgetting. A regime clings to power while its people bear the cost. And still, something sacred stirs. Women remove their hijabs. Voices rise. Grief refuses to be hidden. Like Israel and Egypt, they act free before they are free. Parashat Bo doesn't promise tyrannies fall quickly. It teaches something more dangerous. They fall when people stop lying to survive. Freedom is not born at the border. It is born the moment fear loses authority. And Bo leaves us with a present question. Who is still clinging to power at the cost of life, and who has already packed for the walk out? That was very poignant, Parsha, Rabbi, and I must tell you that, as always, I just enjoyed your approach to Torah so much today. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, just lovely, lovely ideas. Ladies and gentlemen, I would ask you, please, that when you go to my YouTube page, the Avrum Rosensweig Show, you will find what's called a playlist there. And we have slotted all of our series within that playlist. So if you don't want to hear my other interviews as an example, but just the show that Rabbi and Gemara and I do, you can go there and you can listen to all of them. There have been many over the last year plus. And we're very thankful for your viewership, and we appreciate it very much. If you'd like to be in touch, you can do so. Our email is at the bottom of the page. And we pray for freedom for the Iranian people, and we pray for safety for the Jewish population there, as well as all of their neighbors. Until then, Sei gesund, as my mother used to say, we look forward to being with you again next week, God willing. Thank you so much.